Hello, today is working on my NABU cable. So things I've got assembled today, I've got my USB to DB9 serial RS422 adapter. I've got a half of a, I believe this was a MIDI cable, but it's the right DIN connector here. I'm going to have to take the wires on the other side and map them into this breakout DB9 connector, which will plug into here and allow me to make my connection. Tools that I've got my big wire strippers to be able to strip this part. I've picked up another higher gauge, like smaller wire stripper for getting the individual wires. That was one of the things that was really kind of throwing me off last time I tried this. Got a screwdriver to be able to screw it into place. I've got my multimeter here to test connectivity, and I've also got my soldering iron over here, which I don't think is in shot. Oh no, it is right there. So I've also got my soldering iron to be able to tin the wires just to make a nice solid connection instead of just a bunch of frayed wires, which will be what we'll find when we strip this thing up. But okay. Let's get started with working on this part, stripping all the wires. Alright. So, first thing you have to do now, I was already working on this, so I think what I'm going to do, just to kind of start from scratch, is I'm going to just strip off this whole thing. So let me get these in here. There we go. I'm just going to get a clean cut. There we go. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to strip off the outside. And that means feeding it in the appropriate gauge here. So it's the largest one for this one. On this one, which is it says it's 10. Alright, so just a nice little pull on that, and it'll actually strip off everything, get you the little shielding here. I'm going to peel that back. I don't need that. Let me see. Is that enough? I'm just trying to see how much. I think I can strip off a little more. Alright, I'm going to strip off a little more. What I'm trying to do is I'm going to try and give myself enough length here to make it easy to work with these individual wires, but not so long that it's going to stick out the back of this adapter, because I want this to be a fairly... Oh, wrong way. Let's go grab a little more shielding off. There we go. Okay. I'm going to pull that back again. Okay, so in this cable we've got 5 shielded, well, plastic shielded wires, and then this loose set of strands here is the ground. And you can see here, I don't know how close I'll have to get, but essentially these are just a bunch of fine wires. And it's the same thing with these as well. Now, I know I don't need the orange one. The orange one's actually is the one pin we don't need here, because essentially what we're going to be connecting is on these 5 pins. 2 of them are going to be used for transmit, 2 of them are used for receive, the 5th one's not necessary. And the pinouts for this, I've got on my laptop, just as a reference. I'll grab a screenshot and I'll throw it in the video just so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But essentially, we have to map each one of the appropriate pins here to the breakout. Oh, actually, this is what came with the RS232 connector. So those are marked, the transmit and receive. There's 2 transmits, 2 receives, and then the ground is the last pin. I'm not going to use this though, because I like having a fully enclosed. Like I said, this is going to eventually be a nice, well, this will be a nice sort of fairly professional. There's not going to be a slack. I think I'm missing a couple parts on this thing, but it'll do the job for now. Essentially what I'm going to be doing is getting the appropriate wires into here. So now, the difference between these two is this only has 5 pins, which is really all you need, and they map to 5 of the specific holes in here, whereas this is a more generic DB9 connector, which has all 9 connectors plus ground. So ground in this case would be the shielding, and then the 9 pins all map to one of these. So what I'm going to have to do is figure out which pins here map to the pins on the DIN, and then I'll connect them up. Okay, before we get to that, let me just prepare the wire. Okay, so first thing I need to do is I need to strip off the shielding off of these 5 wires, at least the last bit of it, so that I can have that nice clear wire. And for these ones, I've realized that it is 20, I think it's 26. If you're not sure what gauge a wire is, start large, and like here you can see there's no grab whatsoever. If I go to 24 or 0.8 millimeters, 24 AWG, which is 2 different measurements, but they're both talking about the same thing. So, all right, so 26 is definitely the right thing. You can feel resistance, and when I pull it, I've stripped off the end of the plastic shielding here. I'm going to do that for all 4 of these. And this is so much easier to use with a proper tool. I was trying to do this before with just a pair, with just the cutting part of a regular pair of pliers, and it's too easy to just strip off wire. You don't get the plastic only. You have to get the right gauge stripper, and it'll just take the casing and it'll leave the wire intact. So again, another one, so easy. But that was one of the things I was waiting for to finish this up, because I didn't have one of these. I only had my more fancier wire strippers, which don't deal with wires of this size. Let's go a little, there we go. All right. So now I've got all 4 of the wires that I need stripped. Before I start inserting them, so you can see that they're basically just a bunch of fine wires. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn on my soldering iron. I'm just going to I'm going to take some solder, some of my solder here, and just coat each of the tips so that it's one solid piece of metal, as opposed to just a bunch of fine strands that'll start to fray and spread. And you want to get as much. You want to use all the wires as a solid connection. But yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. And I'll do the same thing with these ground wires as well. Although, again, I'm not sure I'm going to need to connect this up. Let's go to this next step. Okay. Let's get ready to do some soldering. All right, let's get my solder out. That's heated. I've got some distilled water in my foam. My station's all ready. Okay, so now I'm going to use my third hand here just to kind of hold this so I can work on the individual wires without needing a third hand. Right. And this has got, let me just... Alright, I'm just going to tip my soldering iron, and then let's get in here and get this tinned. Alright, that's one. 2. Alright, that looks good. Okay, I can turn this off. Alright. Let me just bring this up to the camera. Okay, so As you can see here, all 4 wires plus the ground I have now coated with some solder. So that just makes it a nice solid piece of metal so that when I plug these in, I'm not going to get frayed wires. I should be able to fit them into each of the different spots pretty easily. Okay, that step is done. Next step is actually connecting this to my connector here, the appropriate one. So let me just get the let me get the diagram up on my computer, and we'll come right back. Hello again. So next day, I took a bit of a break just to kind of regather my thoughts and plan some issues around some of the issues I was having. Let me just kind of review where I got with my adapter cable and the issues that I've had in trying to get it working. So if you're working off of the NABU.ca instructions, a couple of things to note. The pinout that you show, especially for the DIN connector, that's the 5-pin DIN at the back that goes into the back here. This is always a problem when you're trying to wire up DIN connectors in particular, but any sort of connector really, is when you're dealing with a pinout diagram. A pinout diagram works in, you're always looking at a connector from one of 2 directions. So it's, and the opposite, and the mirror is basically, if you're looking at in the diagram that's on the NABU.ca website, the pinout is from the socket perspective. And if you're soldering a cable, so socket perspective means the female side. So this is the male side with all the pins. It plugs into a socket. So if you're looking at the socket, the numbering of the pins on this connector, if you're looking at the socket versus if you're looking at the plug, are the mirror versions of each other. So pin 1, I think it goes pin 1, 4, 3, 5, 2. In one direction, it would be 1, 4, 3, 5, 2 going the other way if you're looking at it. And so that was my first mistake, was I was reading a pin out from the socket side, which if you're soldering a connector, you're looking at it from the same side, because if you're looking at the pin side, the part that plugs into the socket, the pins go in one direction. But if you're going to solder the wires onto each of the individual DIN connectors, that's the same order as the socket, because you're looking at it from this direction instead of the opposite direction. So that was my first mistake, was that I had my pins wired up in reverse order. So I finally got that figured out, and I've got my 4 pins in here. I've just got the TX and RX pins. I actually don't have ground connected, and it seems to work fine, which is what I'd heard in stories around that anyway. So I'm still using this one that came with the thing. I'm going to rewire this with my full breakout thing later. The nice thing about, at least for speediness and getting this hooked up, there's only 5 pin spots here to hook up, and only 4 of them that you really need to, at least to get this to work. Whereas this is the full 9-pin plus ground breakout on it, because this is a full DB9. This is specific to the RS2 422 adapter, so it only has the pins that you need in order to be able to use it. I haven't found anybody doing the proper pinout for a full-on DB9, so what I'm going to have to do is I'll have to get my continuity and test the pins out here to figure out which ones. I know that pin 1 on here is the first one here. I just haven't done the rest of the work. So maybe I'll do that on a follow-up video, as I'll walk through what the full pinout is, both for this and for this. But anyway, my goal for today's video was just to get this up and running and connect it. Next thing I ran into was I had my software up and running for a while. Well, I think I just left this running for a couple of weeks now. And so even though I have this wired up correctly, I wasn't getting my connection when I was just doing an initial test before I put the cameras on. And so what I ended up doing was just closing the app and opening up again. And now everything, when I power this on, oh, hang on. Don't do that yet. Plug this back in. Okay. Okay, so now when I power this on, this should show my, I don't know if this will show my connecting, but this will actually start to connect. So this is the normal startup, and now this is where I would get the internet adapter failure. But you can see now I've got some stuff going on here. Yes, that's correct. Okay, so this is what should be happening. Now this is what the NABU would have looked like if you actually connected to the cable network back in the day. Nice. So, I am now booted up in the NABU network. Huzzah, success. All right. So now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to reposition the camera and I'll get it to focus on the TV screen here just so you can get a better view of what I'm doing. And I'll actually kind of walk through the software. But you can see I've got a little retro joystick hooked up here so I can navigate the menu. Well, let's do that in a second. Let me remove the camera and then we'll do this again. Okay, so this is, like I said, this is the menu that you would find if you turned on your NABU back in the early 80s and you were connected to the NABU network. And so you have a number of menu items here, and these would change on a regular basis. I think there's two different versions of this that I can load. But let's just go into, let's start with the network services. What do we have for network services? So network guide. Oh, interesting. Know it all. What's this? Oh yeah, so the other interesting thing is this has advertisements. So that's the sound it makes. That's what happens. It displays an ad when it's loading up the software. So here we go. All right, press go. Networking help, pricing. Oh, let's take a look at pricing. Rental. Interesting. You couldn't buy it, it looks like. So the computer network guide, you were paying $9.95 a month in 1980 dollars. So that's, what would that be now? 20, 30 bucks? Something like that. Education channel will be another $8 on top of that. Oh. Am I froze? Well, that's not very useful. All right, hang on. I'm going to reset it. Oh, he remembers where you were. This tutorial, this utilities, printer tutorial. Education channel. Language arts. Logo. All right, let's try matching capital. I'm going to have to read my logo manuals to figure out what that is. All right, let's, can I escape? All right, let's reset. family fun, mysteries, strategy games, video games. Let's see what's under video games. Astrolander, Demotrons, Laser Attack, Mummy's Tomb, Ping. Let's try Astrolander. I love all these old 1980s ads that they've got on here too, which, yeah, it's a real kind of blast from the past. Press go. Press go. I don't think this is something some people have fully played with, because there's definitely seem to be some parts of the menu that aren't working. But let's get into World of Games. I believe this one will work. So let's try Antarctic Venture, which I think also came as Antarctic Adventure for like the Atari 2600. But anyway, it's the same game. Maybe it is just Antarctic Venture, but I remember seeing other versions of this game under that name. But either way, so this game, you have a penguin. Oh, press go. Okay, so I guess those are your stages. So you have a jump. You want to pick up these items, avoid these. Ooh, and I fell in. So I believe these are all MSX or Coleco games. Again, all similar hardware, so it would be fairly easy to... Oh. I think I died. Oh, no, I made it. That's fun. Oh. Alright, I'm definitely getting some weird, I don't know if it's a connection issue or... Okay, I think that's where I'm going to stop it today. I'm definitely going to have to do some digging into this and understanding how the network software works and what I can sort of do and see what's working and what's not. But I finally have a working NABU with a software connecting to the network. I know there's quite a bit you can do with this now. But like I said, I'm definitely getting some weird... some of the things I'm trying to select aren't working. So I think what I'll do is over the next week or so, I'll play with this, and then maybe I'll do another video next week, kind of going more in depth on the adapter. But yeah, that's it for now. I'm just going to sign off, and we'll see you next week.